Welcome to the Nurse Shark Academy Show, a Baxter Professional Services production. Welcome to the Nurse Shark Academy Show. We're experts in nursing and experts in business. I'm Tina Baxter, your host. The Nurse Shark Academy Show highlights nurse business owners and others in the healthcare field who promote entrepreneurship. We encourage you to come and tell your story. Today's episode, how one nurse with tough skin now empowers other nurses. And today's guest is Wendy Dixon-Jewitt.
Why I started doing what I was doing is because I didn't have a tough skin. I didn't have the skills to deal with this stuff. I didn't know what was going on. How do you grow a tough skin? I've spent my entire career learning how to grow a tough skin. So my nursing instructor said, Wendy, because one of the patients called me a bitch, a stupid bitch, when I was a student doing my first dressing. And my instructor knew I was devastated by that. And she, outside the room, she's like, Wendy, if you're going to be a nurse, you need to grow a tougher skin. And I'm just like, well, how do you do that? Right? How do you grow a tougher skin? Is there a way to do it that's not the school of hard knocks? So that's been the question I've been seeking to answer for several decades now. So,
I always tell people, draw from your experience if you can. So for you, the experience of dealing with your mom and your mom's illness, that was sort of an awakening at a young age. Nurses, are you burnt out, frustrated, looking for something new? Are you looking for more? Nurses, are you ready to feel the sun? You will dream big and expand your consciousness as an entrepreneur. Your nursing license is your key to freedom. Join the Nurse Shark Academy at thenursesharkacademy.biz today. Welcome to the Nurse Shark Academy Show, where we're experts in nursing and experts in business. I'm Tina Baxter, your host. The Nurse Shark Academy Show highlights nurse business owners and others in the healthcare field who promote entrepreneurship. We interview nurse leaders and encourage them to tell their story. My mission is for you to own your seat at the table of nurse entrepreneurship, gaining the confidence, skills, and freedom to live your life on your own terms. You will dream big and expand your consciousness as an entrepreneur. Join us and support these wonderful nurse entrepreneurs and leaders. Today's guest is Wendy Dixon-Jewitt of Brainstorm Soft Skill Solutions out of Canada. Wendy Dixon-Jewitt is a nurse with over 30 years of experience. She's transformed crisis communication, turned around toxic workplace cultures, and created the Broken to Badass Nurse Empowerment Pathway to help nurses get back on their feet and find their voice. Welcome to the show, Wendy.
Thank you very much, Tina. It's great to be here.
Thanks for coming. I'm so excited to be able to talk with you today. I think I found you on LinkedIn and I just saw something you posted. I said, okay, we've got to talk. I got to have her on the show. Okay, so I'm going to ask you that question that I always ask everybody when we first start off. What made you become a nurse?
Well, I like to tell a story, and maybe it's a romanticized story, but my mother was disabled with severe rheumatoid arthritis. She became ill after she had me, and I was baby number 5. So I was the baby of 5 children. And of course, this was during a time, Tina, that kids under 12 weren't allowed in hospitals or rehab centers. So as you can imagine, I didn't see a lot of my mom in those formative years, and because she was in the hospital and I wasn't allowed to go in there. So I was crying. My dad was taking the kids and he said, oh, I'm going to take you. Okay. So he took me into the hospital, and my older brother, who was 5 at the time, a set of twins, was guarding the door. And he was supposed to say if he saw any nurses coming. And if the nurse was coming, I had to hide under the bed. So, of course, my brother's like, there's a nurse coming, there's a nurse coming. So I hid under the bed. And I remember having a little coat on and those little, those little brown, they're black and white little shoes. And I was so scared. And I saw these white shoes and these pantyhose. And, I was so scared I was going to get kicked out. And I wanted to see my mom. And then she left, and my dad said, you can come out now, Wendy. And when I came out, the nurse had seen me come in, and she left me orange juice and cookies. So I thought, I don't know who these nurses are, but maybe they're pretty good people because they let me stay. And so that really had a positive impact on me. And then I think as I got older and I was a nurse myself, I like to think in my head, I romanticize that this nurse was part of the, this is a stupid rule. We need to get rid of this rule. Kids need to see their
Hmm.
parents. And I like to think it was that particular nurse that transformed that stupid policy. So, the magic of a nurse that's had enough, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, growing up, was nursing always what you wanted to do? Or, like most kids, we think about, oh, I want to be an astronaut. No, I want to be president. No, I want to, do whatever. Was nursing always what you wanted to do?
No, actually, I went to school for fine arts. I liked theater, acting. I play the flute, vocals. I did that all through my formative years. And I went to university for that. And then I met up with the divas in theater. I just thought, I can't deal with people that think they're so important when they're really not important at all. Little did I know, hey. So, anyways, I went back. My hometown was Weyburn, Saskatchewan, and Weyburn, Saskatchewan is home of many historic things. One of them was the largest mental hospital in the world at one time at the turn
Mm,
of the century, the 20th century. So, my a lot of our town, our city, small city, worked there, and I don't know why. I just wanted to work there, and so I kept trying to get a job there as because you could just walk in and become a nursing assistant, and they train you on the job. So I was 19, and they wouldn't give me a job there. So I kept meeting with the administrator saying, I want to work here. And they, Wendy, you want to work retail. You don't want to work here. This is a hard job. This is not a nice job. But I finally convinced them. So I started working as a nursing assistant in this big mental hospital. And it was, of course, shocking and eye-opening because people literally were dropped off as babies and had lived their entire existence on the planet in
oh,
this
wow.
big institution. They were very institutionalized. So you saw things you would never even imagine were possible in the world. So that was kind of eye opening. And then I really enjoyed it. It was, it was really good. And I really enjoyed providing service and care to people. But this was the time there's no lifts, there's no slide sheets. You
Hmm.
had to have total muscle. Everything was muscle. You did the fireman's hold, to
Yep.
transfer. There's no
Yep.
slider sheets. There's nothing. Like there's no incontinence products. And I just looked at the 60-year-olds and I'm like, how are you still doing this at 60? So really it was a survival strategy. I wanted to stay in healthcare. I was pretty smart and I'm just like, okay, I see the registered nurses are, they're not doing the heavy lifting. They're doing something else. So I think I'll do that. So really, did I really want to be a nurse? I didn't know if I really wanted to be a registered nurse, but I knew I have a body. Everyone has a body that I know.
Hmm.
You're gonna have health problems. So the knowledge is never going to be wasted. This is never a wasted degree. Everyone's going to have to navigate their health and the healthcare system. So honestly, I just knew that it was an investment worth making. Where it would take me, I had no idea at that time. But of course, nursing can take you anywhere because you learn the span of a lifetime and you get experiences you'd never get anywhere else. And maybe that you'd never want, but you get anyways, if you know what I mean, Tina. So,
Definitely, because I started out as a CNA as well. And one of the first things I recognized pretty quickly was that, hey, my body's not going to, be able to do this forever. And two, CNAs don't get paid enough. And so
no.
I was like, I think I should be a nurse.
Yeah, exactly. And share your skills in other ways. But I'm absolutely glad I had those 7 years as a nursing assistant, off the street doing that hard work because it just makes you a better everything. It makes you a better leader, a better instructor, when you come up through all
Yes.
the points of nursing. It's just makes you richer human being, really, I think.
I think as you add on to your experiences and you move up, having that foundation of, you know, basic care for the individual was an advantage for me, going into nursing school, because I'd already touched a patient. So I was good with that. I've already given a bath. I didn't have a problem with that. So I wasn't like some of my peers who had never seen a naked body other than their own.
Oh, there's tremendous. Like my last decade I spent as a nursing faculty in a polytechnic for practical nursing. And I mean, I can't imagine, like, I was considered a mature student because I think I was 23, 24. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, these kids coming out 18, like it's a lot. It's a lot to take on, you know. All of a sudden you're seeing very intimate parts of people that are vulnerable. You're seeing people in pain. You're dealing with death, you're dealing with dying. Like it is so much psychological and emotional loads to take on at such a young formative years. Like the expectation is just, the ask is so high of our student
Mm-hmm.
nurses, you know.
Yes.
It's difficult. It's a lot.
I had the privilege of training 16-year-olds to become CNAs.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
And the some of them, not all of them, but some of them were like, "You mean I've got to touch him where?"
Exactly, exactly. And of course,
And that's
back in the day, the nurses loved to haze you. Like they would do stuff to you, right? Because you're this
hmm
young kid and you're just so naive, right? So they would give you the people they knew were going to probably traumatize you. You know, it was that whole culture of rite of passage, right? It's just like
yes,
this old guy had a big erection, and I was like 18. He's just, hey nurse, you want a piece of tail? Like I literally ran out of the bathing room, and the senior nurse was just laughing at me, and I'm just like, you have to learn these things. Like I don't have to learn them day one, like
yes.
like but they would just do it just to entertain themselves, right?
hmm
Hopefully I'm much more compassionate, and I personally would never do that, but that was just the culture at the time, right?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
initiated you initiated the new people. That was their initiation into the healthcare industry. So let's give them the hardest. Let's shock them. Let's see if they've got what it takes, right?
One of my male students, I'll never forget this. We didn't know that the female resident was handsy and would flash people. She didn't care what gender you were; she was going to flash you. And
Mm-hmm.
he's 16, and his mom made him take the class.
Oh my goodness.
So he goes in there to, I forget what it was, to give her some water or something like that. And she's just flashing him, and he's just losing it. And
Horrified,
so
just like, what is happening?
and the staff was like, "Oh, we forgot to tell you not to put anybody with her because she flashes everybody." She grabbed the crotch of our of our physical therapist, and I'm just like, "Okay, I should have known that before we
Yeah,
assigned
that
this
should
to this
probably be
our
flagged in
male
the care
student."
plan somewhere, like,
Yeah, you should
so
have
we would
told
know
us.
that.
I
I
wouldn't have
don't
sent
think
us to
that would
school
happen
for it.
today, Tina. Do you? I don't think it would.
No, no,
No.
I hope not. I hope not.
No. Like I kept my students away from behavioral. It's like, no, you're not going to learn behavioral, year one, or even year two. Like behavioral's advanced skills. We got to get the basics first. Do you
Yes.
have to learn behaviors? Yeah, and we don't do a good job of teaching it. I mean, there's some good
Yeah.
courses, but that's basically why I started doing what I was doing, is because I didn't have a tough skin. I didn't have the skills to deal with this stuff. I didn't know what was going on. Like, how do you grow a tough skin? I've spent my entire career learning how to grow a tough skin. So my nursing instructor said, Wendy, because one of the patients called me a bitch, a stupid bitch, when I was
hmm
a student doing my first dressing. And my instructor knew I was devastated by that. And she, outside the room, she's like, Wendy, like, if you're going to be a nurse, you need to grow a tougher skin. And I'm just like, well, how do you do that? Right? Like, how do you grow a tougher skin? Is there a way to do it that's not the school of hard knocks? So that's been the question I've been seeking to answer for several decades now. So
I always tell people draw from your experience if you can. So, for you, the experience of dealing with your mom and your mom's illness, that was sort of an awakening at a young age of dealing with someone who is sick. For me, I volunteered everywhere my mom volunteered. You were automatically a volunteer. So I had volunteered in the nursing home, and
mhm.
also volunteered in the children's home. So I had seen a lot, and it didn't hurt that my dad cursed like a sailor. So I was kind of used to that.
Yeah, oh, family of origin makes a huge difference for sure.
Yeah,
If you're used to that, you can deal, right?
yeah. So I was like, they would call you things, and my mom did a very good job of preparing me for people not, accepting you right away for whatever reason. And
Mm-hmm.
so she did a really good job of preparing me for that. She was in public relations. And so she knew
Mm-hmm.
how to, bring out the best in people and deal with difficult people, because sometimes she dealt with um, movie stars, television actors, people
Yeah,
with a
the
lot of
same with,
ego.
yeah, yeah, it was kind of funny you say that, Tina, because yeah, the divas, right? Because in
Hmm.
theater, that's why I was laughing, because in theater it's just like, I don't want to deal with these divas. Like, get over yourself. Like you're so not that. Like I just said, yeah, and plus the arts, right? It's like I'm never
Right.
going to make any money here. And then I went right into healthcare where it's full of divas, especially
Yeah,
the physicians.
exactly.
They're
Yeah,
all
that's what I
divas.
was
Like
laughing at
you have
that.
to learn to deal with the physician divas. Oh my goodness, it's like,
Yes.
oh, and and the oppression and the abuse, and it's just like out of the frying pan into the fire for sure. It's like, what was I thinking?
One of the things I've learned, you're talking about the physician divas, is they're not used to pushback. They're not used
No,
to
no,
being
no,
confronted with their behavior. And
no.
so I, they be doing their thing, they're yelling and they're screaming. I'm like, okay. Because I had one call me at home, and I said,
Oh my
okay,
goodness.
um, I'll talk to you about it tomorrow when I get into the office. So I go into the office like an hour early, and I sit outside his office door, knowing that he has to come back to his office sometime, right? And I
I
was
love
going,
you already, Tina.
yeah, we're gonna have this out. I was like, so
Oh yeah, you're my
he was,
kind of nurse, Tina.
yeah, he was dodging me, right?
Oh yeah.
And so he had to come back because he had patients to see. And I was just smiled really brightly, and I said, Doctor, um, I'm not gonna call his name, even though he has passed on. I said, I understand we have a problem. He goes, "Oh well, we don't really have I said, "Well, let's go talk about it because you called me at home. Apparently, we have a problem." And I said, "So let me explain to you my experience. When you, it was all about a patient that he didn't want to admit because the patient was MRDD, right, and had mental
Mm-hmm.
retardation.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, he's like, I don't want to take on our psychiatric unit these developmental patients now." I grew up volunteering in the children's home with severely mentally handicapped people, right?
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
this guy just had Down syndrome. So in
Yeah.
my mind, I'm like, he's got
Like, like what are
Downs,
you talking about? Like,
maybe some autism, very well functioning, lives on his own. So I'm like, yeah. So he was so upset because I admitted this person that had Down syndrome. And I said, well, you need to understand when you said severely, in my mind, I'm thinking mutism, can't walk. That's what I'm hearing. You're saying anybody that has a diagnosis of developmental delay. I said, so there was a lack of communication on our part. Because he's like, this person clearly has. And I'm like, yeah, but you said severely. Your definition of severe, my definition of severe are two different things. And so we
mm-hmm.
had this conversation, and he admitted, yeah, I knew you were up here and I was avoiding you. I said, well, I
Yeah.
just want to make sure we don't have any more communication problems. He said,
Mm-hmm.
no, 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 it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Do you know when that man ended up leaving and going to another place because he just kind of moved on to become medical director somewhere else? He gave me a hug when he left. I was like,
Well, and that's what I find. Like, people need to be held accountable.
mm-hmm,
And one of the things I found in all my research and my thesis study on dealing with verbal abuse, and it's like I said, I couldn't handle the culture. Like after I became a registered nurse, my first job, I was really vulnerable because I had moved away. Not my first job, but one of my first jobs. I
mm-hmm,
moved to a new province. I was away from my support system. I was on my own. And I ended up in a work situation where, yeah, the physicians are arrogant, they're abusive. The director of nursing was really abusive, but only to new
mm-hmm.
nurses, only to new
Okay,
grads. And I found
okay.
this out in the process of being there a couple of years. And then it was just more that I could cope with. And then I lost my temper because, of course, the hazing, they assigned me
Mm-hmm.
the hardest. this director of nursing signed me the most difficult patient that you had to be with 2 hours, and it was just a barrage of abuse from this patient. And so finally, I was in over my head. I lost my temper, and I told this patient off. Like, I swore at him, and I told him not nice things. And at the time, I'm like 120 pounds soaking wet, and I'm young, and he just looked at me. He was puffing on a pipe, because this is a time you could smoke. So he was puffing on the pipe for 2 hours to pipe smoke in my face the whole time. And he takes a big draw on his pipe, and he looks at me, and he's like, for the first time, I think he really looked at me. Before that, I wasn't a person to him, but he looked at me and he said, "You sure have a potty mouth for a tiny little thing." And my temper tantrum intervention worked wonders. Like after that, like same thing, right? Like that was totally unprofessional. It's not a way you can move through the world. It's not going to be, something your regulatory body's going to endorse. But again, because I didn't know how to deal, didn't know how to push back respectfully, set limits, let them know who I was. Because at that time, I'm still young. I'm still developing my professional identity. I don't even know who I am, right?
Right.
So that did work wonders. But then, like shortly after that, like I just left because I vowed never to go back to bedside nursing after that experience. And I didn't for almost a decade. And then I found out in my research, that's actually pretty common. Like Kathleen Bartholomew in her horizontal violence book had cited, I think it was that book, I have several of her books, cited 60% of new registered nurses leave their job within the first 2 years. 60%, I'm like, that can't be right. So I, of course, diligent, I go back to the original research. And what they said in the research, they leave. Like they probably come back in somewhere else, but they leave, and training, like that's a lot of money trying to onboard a new nurse. It takes a long time to kind of get up to speed and all the onboarding. I'm like, if we're losing 60% of all our new first nurses out of their job, like that's millions and millions of dollars and pain and despair. Like we're doing a bad job of our onboarding of new employees, and we need to fix the culture. And the only way to fix the culture is to start up leveling our own training. Like you said, like no one talks back, no one pushed back against doctors. Like no one says things to them like you did. I did as I grew in my maturity and my skills and my abilities. But what I found out when I was doing my research for my master's thesis is Elizabeth Peter does ethical resistance research. And I was about to go to a concert just before the pandemic shutdown. And so I was on the phone with her and I asked her, I never did get to the conference because everything shut down, the world shut down. But I asked her, what's the most surprising thing about ethical resistance or resistance in general and the nursing workforce? And she said, how seldom they engage in any kind of resistance. And I'm like, for me, that was a mic drop moment. Because as a healthcare leader, I led a team of, it was a rehab unit. So I was the leader of all the professions. And I would watch and I would experience other professions resisting and pushing back. And it was like the nurses would just put their heads down and take it. And I'm like, I would be advocating for them. But I told them, I said, you guys have to show up for yourselves. Like I can't be risking myself constantly as a manager for you when you're not showing up for yourselves. Like pharmacy can't do it, they're too busy. Oh, physiotherapy can't do it, they're too busy. I said, the nurse is the busiest human being on this unit. Yes. They have to answer all the call bells. They're answering the phones. Like, what are you people talking about? They're caring for people. But the workload kept getting dumped to them. And that hasn't stopped. That's continuing to this day. And nurses have to show up for themselves. And a big part of my work is having nurses show up professionally with the words, with the strategies, with what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. Because it's a dangerous field out there. Like nursing is a high risk profession right now because of the infrastructures we have around us. Yes. Very high expectations in the middle of a system collapse. Nobody's taking context in. Now families are suing us individually for system problems. that should be fixed at a system level. Like, it's a dangerous profession right now.
Well,
And
even here, I've noticed that it's not just the families that are suing, but they're now attaching, at least in the U.S., criminal charges to some of these things as well.
exactly. Like, literally, the individual powerless nurse is being held responsible for the collapse of an entire industry. And that's where we're at right now. So, if you're going to be in this industry, you're going to have to up level your soft skills. You're going to have to learn to say no to protect your license, because saying yes because my employer asked me is not a defense. In court, in
Right.
front of your regulatory body, like, I spoke truth to power several times in my career. I advocated probably for nurses too hard. I wouldn't turn away from harm. That's problematic for industry. That's problematic for organizations. They don't like that. They don't know what to do with it because nurses don't do it. They just get on board and protect everybody. And if anyone, even a few people, like, what happens is, even when there are brave people, when there's courageous people, and the root of courage is heart. It's about having that spirit. It's leading from the heart. When you're not going to worry, you're not going to put yourself first. And every once in a while, there's people, like I was one of them. Every once in a while, I wouldn't put myself first. I'd put myself in harm's way because this is not right, and this needs to change. And that's the only way anything's ever gotten changed, Tina.
Yes.
In history, is someone
Yes.
steps up and says, that's enough. And then that's fine, you can take the hit. But if one other person says, I agree, the whole game changes. You know what I mean? So if there's someone with some courage out there and they're saying, this is not right, you need to show up with them. You need to come on board, because if you do, then that's not two people. One and one is like a force, like, that's a
Yes.
cohort. When you get to three, that changes the game. Three people standing together changes the game. So nurses, if they're not going to show up for themselves, like we're going to be in huge trouble here. Like, nurses have to start to find their voice. Nurses, the entire industry, 29 million globally, are silent. We
Yes.
have to find our voice. Yes, we can't just be going off half cocked. We've got a million laws, legislation, acts around us to keep us silent and keep us quiet. But we need to start being smart, strategic, and in the one-on-one interactions, in the small places, you don't have to take big risks, right? You
Right.
don't have to take huge risks. I mean, the risk for you sitting in that doctor's office, it was the risk to the physician because they had to face you. You were holding them accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole thing, hold people accountable. Like, we had this one physician who was just behaving super badly, and that's not unusual. And there's a medical director. So I'm talking to the medical director because the physicians are the one person I have no control over, right?
Right.
I control my entire workforce. I don't control the physicians. They've got different leadership. And that was always the problem, because the medical leadership was 100% invisible and lacking.
Right.
So I had the conversation with the medical director, and he said, oh, Wendy, I hate conflict. This is not conflict. This is accountability. This is performance management. This is what you need to do to make a workforce work. Well, will you do it for me? You know what I mean? It's like,
Yes.
this is, yeah, of course I can do it. Of course I can have the conversation, but I have no clout. The only clout I have is to try to convince the organization not to renew this physician's contract. So I couldn't fix the problem. And honestly, every big problem I've had as a healthcare leader is with a physician you can't fix. And the lack of physician leadership is really problematic because of the hierarchy, right? The power hierarchy and the societal power hierarchy. Nurses are the handmaids, physicians are the gods. So we've got this, we're just the helpers. We've lost, we don't have our autonomy. We have to get our sovereignty back. And the place to do that is those one-on-one interactions, you know.
I so agree. Starting with those day to day interactions that you have. I had a situation where, as a nurse practitioner, I had a therapist kind of come between me and the therapeutic relationship with my client. We shared
Mm-hmm.
a client. And so I was mad about it. And I sent her an email, and she went to her boss, who said, I was being difficult. And so I went to my boss. So I told my boss, I said, so imagine you're developing this relationship with your patient, and then someone comes in and kind of does some splitting. And because this patient, has a, access to diagnosis, we all know personality disorder, they're very good at staff splitting. And so she's engaging in splitting, and this therapist is not seeing this, and she's engaging in this. And I said, and if she had did this, do you think that she would have told her patient, if it was your patient, hey, you need to get a new prescriber? Do you think she would have done that to you? She goes, oh no, never. I said, then why do you think it was okay for her to do that to me?
Mm-hmm.
It's those little things that I think that we
Exactly.
sometimes
Having those
miss.
conversations, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
I remember I had a mental illness recovery company, and you'll probably relate to this, Tina, because you
Hmm.
were psychiatry, your mental health, it was your area of specialty. So I was visiting my brother, who has a history of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and he was in the hospital. And when I was in the hospital, this is after I was already a nurse, after I was already involved in mental illness advocacy with Schizophrenia Society. I was on the national board, so I was in it. I was in the industry. And this psychiatrist was literally like frothing at the mouth, almost steaming, and he had cornered this obvious, looked like a new citizen to Canada, young man, probably 21, and was just like abusive in the corner.
Hmm.
So I went, like, in plain view of everyone, like, this is what I'm talking about, boldly,
Hmm.
boldly abusive. And so I went and talked to the manager, and I told her what I saw, and she said, I've tried to do something about this psychiatrist. I can't. And if I tried again, honestly, he would get worse. And I'm like, that can't be. Like, what do you mean you can't do anything about it? You're the manager of this unit. You're responsible for these people. How can you not do anything about it? And so I did what the only thing I could do. I saw he had some visitors. The parents, of course, still new Canadians. They're not going to be able to push back against this power,
Right.
right? But at least I told them what I saw. I said, you have to get your son away from that psychiatrist. He is going to destroy him. Like, I was pretty,
Right.
and they're just like, oh, probably did nothing. But then I kind of knew about this physician. It was kind of my mission when I had my own company. If I found out this physician was their physician, I'm like, no, I know why you're as sick as you are. We need to get you a new psychiatrist. Like, I definitely interfered with that relationship because he was so destructive.
There's a difference between advocating and letting someone know that, hey, this is not a good actor. Like, we've had some physicians in our area, and I do want to say this, by the way, those of you who are listening, this is not bash on Doctor Day, okay? So I know some of you will get in my comments and be like, oh, you're anti-doctor. No, I'm not. I have many of them in my family, and I chose nursing over medicine for a reason, but you already know about that. Go back to season 1, episode 1, and hear about that part. But I want to say there's doctors that are bad actors. And if you can get the other doctors on board to help you out, that would be helpful. So, for example, we had a situation where there's an OB that used to be in practice here, and he was known for berating his nurses and his patients. He really hated his overweight patients, but he was like 5 times bigger than they were half the time, right? I'm exaggerating, but at least he was like at least twice their size and very overweight. But he was so condescending. He happened to be my doctor. And I thought, I've got to get away from him, because if I'm in the hospital, I've had surgery or something, I don't want my nurses to be afraid to call him if something's going wrong because he's such a jerk. So I had it was so funny. I was in the bathroom somewhere at a conference, a nursing conference or something, and a nurse midwife colleague was there, and I just started bursting into tears and telling her about my awful experience with this doctor. Da, 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 da. And so she's like, come see my doctor, come work with him, he's great, we'll take care of you. I said, okay. So I became their patient. But the other doctors knew how toxic he was, that they sort of got together, because they don't want to do it publicly, but they got together and they sort of gave an ultimatum: either you leave quietly or we will suspend your privileges and force you out, because he was that bad. So
Yeah.
maybe finding a physician that has a little bit of chutzpah would be helpful.
Well, and the thing is, and I absolutely don't blame the physicians. And any of us that are held unaccountable and told we're special and that we're exalted in society, we're going to start to behave badly. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter who we are. And the problem is, it doesn't just hurt the people in positions of less power, like nurses or their patients. It also hurts their profession. And other physicians don't like it either when they can't do anything about it. Like, they're stuck in it. So it's like physician leadership just needs to step up and do their job. And if they can't do their job, then just I would have been happy to do the job. I just wasn't empowered to do it. If,
Right.
like in that situation, I handled it the way I could. And at the end of the day, we just came up with strategies to work around the behavioral issues of the physician, but the staff were empowered. They knew we had strategies and this is what we're going to do. So if this physician starts getting abusive, you say, I need to walk away right now. and
Yes.
and then the physician would come to me and I will say, that's the instruction I gave the staff. If you become abusive, I've asked them to walk away. They are not to tolerate your abuse, because I did have power over what I instructed my staff to do. Right.
Exactly.
So that's how we kind of solved that problem. And the reason, because I did ask the staff, like, do you want me to try to push hard to get this contract canceled? And all of them at the end of the day said, well, she's a really, really, really good physician to the patients. It's just she's
Mm-hmm.
got this disconnect with staff. So that's how we manage that situation. But there is a tremendous lack of leadership ability and performance management just in the physician ranks, at least in our province, for sure. And I'm sure, I was experiencing it in another province. So I think it's fairly global.
It is. I remember the first time as a manager that I was asked to write up a physician, and it was by his medical director. He told me to write him up and he would take care of it. So I wrote up what I witnessed. I mean, this was a guy that I think he was on his last, kind of performance thing. He was a interim physician that they brought in, and he was standing nose to nose with my nurse screaming at her.
Mhm.
And she was just trying to tell him about the patient because it was a legitimate concern that she had. And I just remember him screaming at her, "Stand down, Linda, stand down." He's ex-military.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, this is unacceptable behavior.
Mhm.
And so I had called their medical director. I talked to my ED. She said, call the medical director for, because he worked for another company. And I explained what happened. He said, write him up. Write him up and I'll take care of it. And
Mhm.
so I did. I did the one page write up. And I was like, I've never had to write up a physician before. But when you're in those areas of leadership, suddenly things shift and you may have to do things that may seem uncomfortable to you. Like I had the hardest time and still do, particularly if you're older than me, calling doctors by their first names, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Unless
I don't
you're
know that I ever do.
yeah.
I
And
still
I
don't. I
had
still
one
don't.
that tried to get me to do it, and I said, "You don't understand.
Yeah, no,
You
I still
are
don't. No, no.
twice my age. This is never going to happen because
Yeah,
even if I would have to call you Mr. Jack or something like that, because my mom would
yeah,
slap
no,
me for calling
no,
calling my elders out there.
no.
So it's I've just always done it. So I've never do that, and I noticed that sometimes just a little bit of the sexism that can happen. Sometimes they'll call the female doctors by their first name, but not call the male doctors by their first name. So
Interesting.
I'm always cognizant of that, and so I will address the female doctors by their title because I
Mhm.
don't want them to have that little sexist, misogynist, thing of, oh, I can call you Becky, but everybody else is going to call me Doctor Feel Good or whatever, right? No, we're not going to do that. I said we're going to respect each other and we'll call each other by our titles and we'll be
Mhm.
professional and we'll do
Mhm.
that, right? Because a
Right.
lot of times I just noticed that.
Mhm.
Now, some of the doctors in between them, themselves, they'll call each other by their first name, and that's fine if everybody's doing it, but
Hmm.
not if you're disrespecting one person or another. I don't allow that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just for me, it's just my age, my demographic. It's I still call people Mr. and Mrs. until they correct me, and even then I'm still struggling in my head.
Yes.
When I'm in long-term care and they're older than me and they're my elders, not to call them by Mr. and Mrs. because that's just it's so deep in our culture when we were growing up that that's the respectful thing to do. So it just doesn't come easy. But yeah, like physicians, it's honestly not their fault. This is again part of the structures that we all grow up in. And the last, like when I was fired from one of my jobs, it was about a physician. I just couldn't fix his practice, and the moral distress was just ridiculous. And I would talk to him like literally, I am putting in reports, this and that, risk assessments, this and that, the decisions. I'm talking to him the whole time. It's not like, oh, I'm doing this behind his back. I'm having conversations with him. And he's literally laughing in my face. He's like, oh, what are they going to do, Wendy? Are they going to fire me? Like, as if they're not going to fire me. And I said, well, a girl could dream. I said, well, and I told him, I said, this is not your fault. You have not gotten to this level of practice without a lot of help from a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can't not have one physician progress note in any of 50 of 40 charts over decades. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
in what world does this happen, Tina? If a nurse didn't chart for 2 days, they'd be fired. Can you imagine decades of not doing a progress note?
What
Like
in
it,
the world?
I know exactly. Like the craziness. Like I thought when you were going to tell your story about having to being asked to write up a physician, because I've had nurses that, oh well, write it up, and they have to out a physician, they have to write what's going on, and then the next day they're in the OR with them. They did not leadership did nothing about it, not a thing.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Just the anatomy of a setup. It's like some kind of crazy game that's being played by senior leaders. So yeah, I mean, physicians are a problem, but I mean, when I'm talking about, and the thing is, I was very well liked, and you seem like Tina, you'd be a very well liked person too. People liked you. Physicians like
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
Like
Yes.
like I can hold people accountable because I'm direct, but I'm also kind. Like I
Yes.
don't think people need to be behaving all the time. I'm not that person. It's like we all need grace. Healthcare is tough. We're all going to lose our shit once in a while,
Oh yes.
for sure. It's
Hmm.
like anything. You're looking for those patterns of behavior and that bold, I can do what I want because I'm so special. And I mean, so that's there. That's always there. And that's a great place to always have room to practice, right? Showing up because you have to show up for your patients. And that's what Elizabeth Peters was all about. It's like, if you can't engage in ethical resistance, your patients are being harmed. You have to be able to do it. And you have to be able to maintain those relationships with, the bad behaviors, the bad behaved patients, the badly behaved doctors, the badly behaved colleagues. You have to win them over. And if you're really going to be exceptional and fantastic at what you do, you have to be able to manipulate the room for the greater good. You have to be able to get people on board in tough situations. And so you have to, but you also, my leadership mantra was, if you don't love everyone, you can't lead anyone. And that's probably because I looked after kids with severe emotional and behavioral problems. I was a certified teaching parent. I was a therapeutic foster parent. And it's like, sorry, nobody gets voted off our island. We're going to have to figure this thing out. And it doesn't mean one person can destroy everyone. You got to gate people, right? You got to barricade
Yes.
people. You got to call them on their behavior. You got to have those hard conversations. And you can do it with love. You can do it.
Hmm.
Like, that's what you have to do. If you're a really good leader, that's what you're doing, right? You're not running the other way. You're sitting outside someone's office waiting for them to show up because you're going to have the conversation, whether you
Yeah.
want to have the conversation or not, right? And that's what good leaders do.
There's a difference between being assertive and being aggressive, and I think people miss the mark on that. You can have those tough conversations without getting into shouting matches, calling people out of their
Mm-hmm.
names. You don't make it personal, you make it professional. And I think we're missing a lot of that. I'm just looking at our current political climate, and how we've lost the ability to talk to people
Mhm.
calmly,
Yeah,
intelligently.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I teach like psychological self-protection, which is really about that central nervous system. And I honestly think there's like been a central nervous system, maybe amygdala, limbic system. I take neurosciences, behavioral sciences, polyvagal theory, and all our central nervous systems through the pandemic, everything got shifted. Like we were all feeling under threat. Like we really have had some damage there that we need to restore. It's not, I know we don't want to hear the word resilience, but it's beyond resilience. It's our biology. We have to reset our biology, and we need to do it intentionally because our threat centers, like I was getting triggered, and I found so many other people just getting triggered. And just to rage, it's like just feeling that fear and that frustration combo that kind of puts you in that heightened state all the time. And then it would take so long because I would recognize I was triggered, but it would take me so long to get back into my reasonable, rational prefrontal cortex part of the brain. And so there is a lot of really good science out there now of how to get ourselves back there. It's not even soft, it's biology. It's
Hmm.
like, how do we reset? How do we learn how to pump the vagal brake so that we can get out of that sympathetic fight or flight and get back into the parasympathetic system? And the things we do intuitively, we're now figuring out the science behind it. So I love that. It is so
Yeah.
cool. Like, when we say if things are getting tense, we say, okay, everybody, let's just take a breath here, right? That's in
Hmm.
our language. Well, it happens that they know now that if you breathe in for 4, out for 6, an extended expiratory, that actually pushes your vagal brake, which is connected to your heart rhythms, which is connected to your whole biology, which triggers a cascade back into your rest and digest, that parasympathetic. And I'm talking this language because if nurses are listening, they know what I'm talking about, right? Because
Yes.
that's my audience, nurses.
Hmm.
So when you're thinking of taking a breath, it's not just a breath. You're pushing your vagal brake. You're resetting back into parasympathetic, and when you're setting back into parasympathetic, you're cooling that amygdala, your caveman, right? You need
Right.
that caveman. That caveman is trying to save your life. Well, maybe your life's not in danger, so you need to take a manual override and say, thank you for looking out for me, amygdala. Thank you, I appreciate it, but I'm taking the wheel back right now. Okay. We're not in danger. We're okay. I'm taking the wheel back. And there's strategies to get us there. So the first one is the deep breath. So we can do the deep breath. The other one is honestly, that you see the Wonder Woman, you don't want to
Hmm.
put your hands on your back because that can look threatening, right? But if
Right.
you're kind of in a difficult situation, what you can do is it's getting the shoulder back, is getting that firm alignment in your spine. Just grab your wrist behind your back while you're talking, or grab your hand to hand if the wrist is too much of a stretch if you're older. And just that again is that biological reset. So you're literally resetting your biology, and you're paying attention to that inner nervous system, what's happening with it. Because if you can regulate and get yourself into your prefrontal cortex, your reason, right?
Right.
Reason, your consequences, impulse control, all the things you need so you don't end up in jail by making what
Exactly.
I escalating. You can also co-regulate. So
Hmm.
that's what I want to give people the gift of. And that's where I ended up going to. It was that ability to go from, I have no idea, I can't cope with this, I don't have thick skin, I'm a mess, I can't deal, to, yeah, actually, going through this whole transformational process where, oh, actually, I have the skills, I have the ability, this is not about me. Someone else is dysregulated. So I created Universal Precautions for Emotional and Behavioral Dysregulation, because the first place we start is setting our own regulation, right? If we're dysregulated, we need to get out of the room. We're
Yeah.
not the people to be in the room. Take our own temperature first. Check in with our own nervous system. Where are we at? Can we regulate ourselves in this situation? because it's all about safety, right? So when we're talking about safety, we're talking about mindset, philosophy, but then strategy and skill in that communication, what to say, not just high level theory, not just, oh, in deep situational, no, just really plain and simple things. So check your own emotional temperature. You can hold. The other thing is to regulate. Most nurses have a pen in their pocket. So, if you go like this, it's part of mindfulness and acceptance commitment therapy. You can click the pen, but you're not just clicking doing the motion. Just actually stop and listen to the click. Because if you stop and listen to that click, it's that biological reset. So Tina, as a nurse, you'll find you've probably done a lot of these things, not even thinking about it, right? You've done it
Oh,
intuitive.
definitely. I'm sitting here holding my pen now. Actually,
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I, but
Like
one of
if
the
you're in a tough conversation with someone, you've got a pen, probably intuitively, you didn't know it, but you're resetting your biology and you didn't even know it. Or
mhm,
you're sighing, you're taking a deep breath, you don't even know
yes,
you're resetting your biology,
yes,
right?
yes.
All these things. Another kind of cool one that nobody knows about that is I think it was Dana who does a lot of with Steve Porg's polyvagal work. She made it clinical, you like usable because it's really high
Mhm,
level, crazy
mhm,
academic stuff. But is take your tongue and put it on the top of the roof of your mouth.
mhm.
So if someone's coming in hot at you and yelling and swearing, just because no one can see that, right?
Right, right.
So no matter what you do, putting that tongue again is that biological tamping down the use of that vagal brake. How we get that vagal brake. Because the more we use the vagal brake, the better the brake works. Because
That's
probably
awesome.
if you've done any trauma work, you've heard about the window of tolerance, right?
Mhm,
So we have a window of tolerance and we can get hyper aroused or we can get hypo shut down, right?
right,
Like lose our minds, lose our poop,
right.
or we shut
Crash
down and
out.
collapse, right? So
Yeah.
we want to be in our window of tolerance, but sometimes we get thrown out of our window of tolerance. So when I talk about how to crawl back into the window of tolerance when you get thrown out, because we're all going to get thrown out.
Yes.
Absolutely, we're all going to get thrown out. So it's just really strategically learning how to go back into that window of tolerance. And then also the other big piece of what I'm teaching is what I call neural pattern interruption. So if we're regulated, automatically we start to regulate the room automatically because
Yes.
we're not emotions contagious, right?
Right.
So if we're inoculated against that and we're not taking the bait on that, we're calming. Like if someone's like this, you know what it's like being in a room with a person like that.
Oh
It's like,
yes.
oh, it's exhausting. So you can regulate the room like that. But the next thing is your job is to try to help the other person self regulate
Mhm.
without them really knowing. Definitely don't say calm down because they're going to
Right.
escalate. Never ever say calm down to someone. Never say you're dysregulated. Never say that.
Mhm. Mhm.
So what you're trying to do is just the neural pattern interruption because their amygdala is alarming. They're under threat, right? They're under threat. All you're trying to do is get them back into their prefrontal cortex. Well, the best way to do that is do something unexpected. Just do the unexpected because they're revving up for a fight. They're expecting you to make excuses, defend yourself, all the things we should never do, right? So those are just the natural instincts, the reaction. We want to be responsive. And in order to be responsive, I have 10 secrets. The first one's apology. Apology is very powerful. It needs to be authentic and real. Agreement. Find something to agree with them on, right? Be concerned. A nurse can use concern all the time because they have inside intel, blood work, this, that. Like we have so many levers we can pull. It's just
Right.
like, you know, I'm really concerned about you. You're yelling and you're screaming at me. This is not your normal behavior. Your potassium was high. And then, like, we've got so many levers. Could
Mhm.
this be the reason? You know what I mean? Or I'm concerned because your blood pressure's been high. And I'm concerned if you continue to be this upset. This is not a good thing for your blood pressure. It could cause you harm. Like, we have lots of levers, right? But it's doing the unexpected. So that's why I am 100% not zero tolerance because emotional and behavioral dysregulation are clinical indicators for like easily 200 health conditions. So if we're saying zero tolerance, we're saying zero tolerance to 200 health conditions we're not prepared to treat. And that's not an
Right.
ethical position for a nurse to take,
Right.
right? So I have zero tolerance for zero training because we have to always be detectives. Like even with my husband who has diabetes, like if his behavior's off, he'll go right back to, well, my blood sugar was really low or my blood sugar was really high. He knows just from his blood sugar, his difference in his behavioral
Mm-hmm.
responses. And we know there's much more complex things than that that affects behaviors, right? So we need to up level our training in this area. We need to be strategic. We need to get the skills we need because there is a lot of non-physical violence in healthcare, and there's increasing violence in healthcare.
Yes.
But we haven't even managed to get a hold of the non-physical violence, which is the gateway to violence. Usually, not always. Some people are instrumental, and I'm going to go kill the doctor. I'm going to go kill the nurse, and it's a rational decision. But I would say I mean, this is anecdotal, but I would say most of the time it's arousal, right? People
Mm-hmm.
are upset. They're afraid. They're scared. They're in pain. They're sick. They're grieving. We have to up level our skills strategically and in a smart way in this area. Like,
We definitely do. And this is more than I want the nurses listening. Listen, this is more than just saying what could you have done differently. We're not talking
oh
about
my
that.
goodness. Oh my
We're not
goodness. Well,
talking about
the
that.
person asking you that question wouldn't have a clue what to do.
Exactly.
They wouldn't have a clue what to do.
This is more about empowering you to become, as they say, the thermostat and not the thermometer.
Yes. Yes.
And so I want the nurse listening to hear that, because this isn't about it's all your fault. This is about how do you take control of yourself
Mm-hmm.
so that you can have control in the situation. And until you learn how to control yourself, you're not going to be able to do what you need to do. Um, One of the things with my patients, they come in, they're very anxious, and then they're all over the place, and they're like, ah, I was like, oh, okay, I can't follow your conversation when you're like this. You know that. Sit down for a minute. Here's some peppermint oil. Here's some lavender oil. I want you to sniff this for a little minute, and they're like, but I want to. I said, we'll talk about that in a moment. Just sniff, and then
Oh,
and then,
Tina,
then
you
they'll
are
start
so,
smiling.
you have all these tricks. Like that's another
Mhm.
one of the regulation things is take some essential oils. We can't use
Yes,
scents, but we can put it right in our nose. We do it for strong smells. We can do it for regulation.
yes,
You know, we can do
hmm
it for regulation. And these tricks, tips and tricks, like know when to hold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. Like I've
yes,
been in situations where I thought I was going to die. My skills wouldn't have saved me. Uh,
yes.
Happenstance and luck saved me, really.
hmm
I've been in really tough situations, but I know, and I set limits. I set limits on difficult behaviors because I know, and I can consequence anyone. I can consequence physicians in the real world just by
Yes.
having a conversation with me. It's just, they don't like that, like you said. You know, that's a consequence. Oh, I have to
Mhm.
talk to Wendy. I don't like that. Um, or families, you can consequence. There can be real world consequences, and patients, there can be real world consequences. But the problem is nobody's having these conversations with people. It's like it's a free for all out there, and a
Yes.
zero. Oh, we have zero tolerance. No, you have 100% tolerance. Nobody's doing anything. We don't have protocols. We don't have skills. We don't have consequences. No one's in leadership is talking to these people. You're not following through. Like it's basically it's parenting, right? It's
hmm
really good high level parenting. Like you have to have consequences, you have to have follow through, and there are things you can do. No, we're not going to push someone out in the street with all their IVs and their ventilators. We're not going to do that. We know we're not going to do that. But there are real world consequences we can use. We're not using any of it anywhere. And if someone's doing a really good job in their unit where they're at, please contact me because I want to know what you're doing. Because people are saying, like, oh, it's none of this de escalation stuff. Where are they doing really good de escalation? Like, where are they doing it? I had to go through 4 different industries to figure
hmm
out my methodology. And I'm not out in the world. I'm just starting to take it out to the world. So who's doing it really well? Because I haven't seen it done really well in my
No,
practice.
no. I had a patient, just met her, have a basically a temper tantrum like a 2-year old, throw her purse down on the ground, and was, it was all about her getting up to walk into my office instead of, or pushing herself in the wheelchair as opposed to me pushing her. And I just had opened the door and I said, "Hey, come on in." And she's like, "I can't, I'm in a wheelchair." And I'm like, "Well, the guy that had one leg and in a wheelchair was able to get in here by himself, so I don't assume anything with anybody." And so I said, "Well, if you need help, that's fine." And it was just got to this whole thing, and basically, I just said, "Hey, I have no problem rescheduling this appointment. Do you want to reschedule and cancel? We can do that today, or we can get it together and we can have a conversation. I mean, I just met you. I don't know what you're capable of. I'm
Mhm.
asking you." And she's just like, so that brought her down. She apologized like 3 times and all this stuff. That brought her down. But I just kind of gently set that uh, boundary, those limits, right from the jump. "Oh, we're not doing this today. Mm-mm.
Mhm. Mhm.
You're not
I
having
had a
to."
lady, I had one client when I was working as an advocate for the Canadian Mental Health Association. I was literally the only professional, the only person, the only department in the province left that would take her call. And I believe she had a personality disorder. So she really couldn't handle her escalation, and she would end up swearing or she would end up yelling. So how did I manage to be the only human being professional in the province that kept taking her calls? Was because I set up the parameters of the conversation right up front and the expectations. I said, "I want to help you. I really want to hear what's going on. I want to listen to your story. If you start yelling and if you start swearing, I will hang up. Once you get yourself back under control,
Mm-hmm.
feel free to call me back. I will take your call." And that's how we did it. And
Yep.
she learned I was serious. So if she called
Mm-hmm.
back and she was still yelling, I would literally go like this. And then one of my colleagues had overheard me interacting with her, and she came into the office. She said, "You are so amazing with her." And I said, "It's just, I don't take it personally. This is
Mm-hmm.
not personal. This is a symptom of her illness. This is not something she has control over. So she's not victimizing me. I'm not the victim. She's the victim of this disability. So I don't personalize it. I just let her know. Like, I can't help her if she's yelling and screaming at me. Like, I literally can't help her. Like,
Right.
because she's wasting so much of my time and my energy, and I can't hear her, and she's not getting to the story. So we save both of us a lot of time, right? So um, and it's recognizing those kinds of things. Like, it's amazing to think that you think we have control over our emotions. No, we don't. Have we learned nothing in a century? No.
No.
No, sometimes we're victims of it. Sometimes we don't have control over our brain, our amygdala, our limbic system. You know, sometimes we just don't. And we always have to lead with an eye of compassion. Always.
So I wanted to get a chance to, because I wanted to segue to here because you mentioned this a couple times. I want to make sure we get to it. So how did you come up with your Brainstorm Soft Skill Solutions, and when did you decide to go out there and launch your company?
Well, I've had a company, I had a mental illness recovery company, Brainstorm Fundamentals, we called it, because we didn't like what was happening in psychiatric care, in mental health. People couldn't get in the hospital. If they did, it's so fragmented. So we wanted to help people where they were at in the community. So Brainstorm Fundamentals was a company that we ran with a nurse colleague of mine for 5 years. And by the time we were done, we were on the bleeding edge, not the leading edge. We were exhausted. Were we doing good work for 5 years? Absolutely. We were doing amazing work. But as you know, as an entrepreneur, it's pretty darn hard to do everything. You're doing program development, you're doing marketing, you're doing the frontline and mental illness recovery when there really hasn't been any kind of legitimate system in half a century. Like, it's fragmented, it's impossible to navigate. Every people working in it, like, we're all trapped in this dysfunction, right? Trying to help people. So we were exhausted. But Brainstorm Fundamentals, we had gotten a master's program at the University of Calgary to sort of dissect and call all our clients, and they said, "Oh, it was a great service. What can we do to kind of get off the bleeding edge?" So they had made some suggestions, but by then we were just tired, so we put it on a shelf, right? But we always felt we were going to resurrect it. So we shut her down in 2001, 2000, maybe 2002. We shut down that business. So that's almost, like, that's over 2 decades ago. So things take time, right?
Yes.
But it never left my mind. And in the meantime, I just sort of went on a hero's journey. Like it's always on my mind. How can we do this better? How can we do this better? And then I did my master's thesis on it, organizational leadership in the frontline nurse, providing care to verbally abusive patients. So I did a deeper dive into the literature, what's going on here. And the only thing I found out is everyone agreed we needed some training, but no one really knew what kind of training we needed. So then I kind of went on a search, like, what can we do? And because I ended up with some amazing behavioral therapists, Dean Fixon and Karen Blase as my bosses in Calgary, looking after kids in a group home. They founded the teaching family model and the teaching interaction. And as soon as I saw the teaching interaction, it was like, oh my God, nurses need this. Like, they were using it on teenagers with really severe behaviors. And it's like, this will work on anyone,
Mm-hmm.
and they had been doing this research since the 1970s down in Boys Town in the United States. They had created programs all over North America. But I was just focused on their teaching interaction because I said, this is the magic. This 7-step process, like, and I used it after I, got back into nursing. It's just like, it just works everywhere. And it's so clear and it's so concise. And you know what you're doing and you know what you're trying to do when you're in these really difficult situations. And it's just being, honestly, it's like you're just nice. Like, if you didn't know there was a framework you were trying to pull people through, you would just think, as people do, God, they're really good with people that are really tough and really difficult. And so you just start getting called into the room. So I used to call it Bedside Manners 101, because the life you save could be your own, because it's really about personal safety.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nurses just respond and react in ways that can put them in harm's way, like can
Yes. Yes.
instigate it. And not that they're deliberately doing it, it's because they don't know any better. They don't know any better. Like, this is about your personal safety. It doesn't matter how many layers of protection you think you have. At the end of the day, at 3 a.m., you're alone in the room with a person that's escalating, and you can call security, but it only takes 5 minutes to be seriously have your life destroyed and maybe end it. Nobody's going to get there on time. So at least let's prepare as much as we can. Let's do things that can keep us safe. And should we put all the other things in place? Absolutely. But if you've ever phoned security and they showed up and they poked the bear, like, and I'm sure lots of people have had that
Oh,
experience,
yes.
or else security is responding to a situation where the nurse had poked the bear, and they don't like that either, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be playing from the same playbook. We all need to have the same playbook. We need to know what we're talking about. So as a team, we can get together because we have the same playbook, the same language. We're trying to accomplish the same things. And we do want to be up leveling our skills. Like, they followed me around when I was learning the teaching interaction, and I had to be evaluated and see, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you try this? Did you try this? In the evaluation process, because you can evaluate it. Yeah, you did that, you did that, you did that, you did that, you did that. Oh, you still got punched in the head. But at least we can, you know what I mean? At least we went through this whole thing that, okay, um, I was trying, because human beings are violent. That's just the reality. And if you don't believe it, watch the evening news. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and they're coming in pain, scared, in a system collapsing. They've got real reasons to be angry and frustrated. And we're there. We're the front line of healthcare, the entire industry, and we're bearing it all on our backs. So unless you're prepared to walk away from nursing, at least up level yourself. At least be more prepared to keep yourself safe. We don't tell firefighters, oh, you're going to be a firefighter, but don't worry, you don't have to fight fire. Like, know the
Yeah.
industry. It's dangerous. It's a dangerous industry. You have to get prepared for it. So that's why I have zero tolerance for zero training. It's like, we have to be trained to deal with these situations effectively, not just the nurse, but right through leadership, right through organizational policy, right through security, right through relationships with policing, right? Because right
Yeah.
now we're piecemeal. Oh, we'll get some cops in here. Oh, we'll get a few more security, but no one has the same philosophy. Police are shoot to kill. Security's like, we're not sure, because we don't even know what their philosophy is.
Mm-hmm.
But nurses, I think, have to be driving the show. because you're the ones that are going to know the clinical indicators behind all of this mess,
Right.
right? It's your
Exactly.
responsibility to know what could be underneath all this stuff. The human in the equation, what's going on medically here.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. And I wanted to ask, so if one of our nurses listening wanted to get a hold of you, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, right now I'm just on LinkedIn. I'm trying to, you know, trying not to be all over the place. You know, when you're first starting a business, you're trying to figure out how am I going to really reach the world. So right now I'm on LinkedIn. You can
Okay.
get me through LinkedIn, or my email is wendy@brainstormsoftskills.com. I don't even have a website right now. I've kind of gone back and forth on it, but you can get me on LinkedIn. You can see my posts, kind of see how I think. It's my business page. I really, again, don't even really know how those business pages work. Like, I don't, there's so much in business. It's like,
Hmm.
especially online. Like when I had our other business, it was so funny. I had one ad in the yellow pages, and every single client came from one ad in the yellow pages. That's all we had to do to keep getting continual clients. Now it's like, you need to understand the online landscape. And, I'm a boomer, so I'm an immigrant to this whole landscape. So I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the wild, wild west out here, man. Like, I've learned a lot, but it's like, at the end of the day, right now, I'm finishing my book, and I'm calling it A-Hole Alert for Nurses: How to Stay Safer and Saner by Turning Soft Skills into Superpowers. And I truly mean that. Like, they have literally saved my life and transformed my career. They've opened every single door I've ever had, because I can have those conversations. And if you want to be an exceptional nurse, if you want to be an exceptional leader, if you don't have these skills, then you can't get anywhere. You can't affect the change. You can't affect people. You don't know how to do it. You're probably doing a lot of things, probably sitting in your office answering emails and trying to get the metrics, but you're really not helping healthcare. You're not helping your team, and you're not helping your
Yes.
patients. You know what I mean? If you're not navigating real people in the real world, you're not doing your job. You might be getting your paycheck, but you're not doing your job.
Well, I was
So
going to say, one, start out with a landing page. That's all you need. You need a full bells
yes,
business.
yes,
Just get,
that's great. I just need a landing page, right?
we'll talk. We'll talk after this. But that's one of
That's
the things
exactly
that we
what I
do.
landed on. I said, I just need to create a landing page. So I'm finishing my book.
Yeah.
I've put my effort into that. I'm up leveling my online program, Broken to Badass Nurse Empowerment Pathway.
Hmm.
And I'm just doing it. I'm not, I'm not rushing it out. This is my legacy work. And it's like, I just want to talk to people like you, cool nurses, get to know people in the world. Like, I am not, when you say the nurse shark, it's like I'm more like a beached whale trying to get to water, but I know my topic. I know
Well,
my expertise in business. I mean, in business, right?
that's the whole point of the Nurse Shark Academy, is because we are experts in nursing and we're experts in business. And that's what a shark is, an expert in their field. And you certainly are a shark. And I would have to say, as a business owner, I understand those apprehensions of getting out there and figuring it out. I certainly didn't start out knowing all this stuff. Right, it was a figure it out moment for myself too, and that's one of the reasons why I founded the Nurse Shark Academy, is to help other nurses to go through the process without having to do it alone. I have to figure it out on your own. But I will say this: I saw that you have a gift for our listeners. You have your PDF called Mindset is Safety Gear: How to Anchor Yourself in Any Storm. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And I'll be certain to put it in the show notes for the link for you all to get that as well.
Yeah, that's just a little toolkit, and we were talking about it. So if they go back and listen to it, but it's a lot of, we have to set our mindset first, right? And we
Hmm.
also have to think about, really rethink, because we have this whole society telling us, oh, be offended at everything, shut down, you're not supposed to be able to cope with it. And it's like, well, why? Like, why would it hurt us? What are we doing differently that is allowing that? So that doesn't necessarily have to do with exactly what my tools are. My little toolkit is just a little PDF, just a quick reference thing to give you some skills, just like we did. I like anchor phrases. what's your anchor phrase going to be? Like when you're going in hot, it's like, I like the one that's, what you think of me is none of my business. If someone's calling me
Mhm.
names or telling me who I am, right?
Yes.
It's that I protecting your own identity, things like that. So it's just a little taster. And the other thing is, yeah, if they want to send me an email, I'll send them that out. And when I get my course up and running, I'll give any of your listeners, if they found me through you, I'll give them a 90% discount off the program, like
Oh,
off
that's
the top,
beautiful.
no problem. I'm just rebooting it right now, so it's not out there right now, but
Hmm.
it should be out in the next few weeks. So, and
Okay.
maybe it's a great thing you came across me, because I think that yeah, you're probably the person that I need to be talking to get to the next step of what I've been doing.
Okay. So I'm going to say this. This is our last question. We usually wrap up with this one. Um, if you had a piece of advice to give to a budding entrepreneur, budding nurse entrepreneur, what piece of advice would you give them?
Know your why, because it gets hard. You know, if anyone tells you, oh, it's so simple. I put this together in 2 days and then I got $60,000 in the weekend, like run.
Yes. Yes.
Does it happen? Sure, absolutely. In this world today, it can absolutely happen. But you have to overcome a lot of your internal. This is a transformational process. Just like me learning how to toughen my skin was a transformational process. And I
Hmm.
always say I will be successful when I've done the work to be successful. And that's not the external, yeah, the external work, but also the inner work that you have to do, right? Figure out figure out your purpose. If you're feeling called to it, just do it. Like it's a business, but it's not easier. Like nursing is a tough profession, but you show up and they will give you a paycheck. The whole thing is, for me, coming from Weyburn, coming from the literally the hometown of socialized medicine in Canada,
Hmm.
business is a hard concept for me. I just want to do good work. When I remember I told you we got that mentor, I got a mentor and he's a billionaire in Canada. He's like, well, really, the only reason you have a business is to make money. Well, I'm not interested in making money. I'm interested in serving people. I'm interested in serving nurses, but I need to keep a roof over my head and I need to feed myself. So I need that financial
Right.
transaction, right? Like money is energy, money is currency. That's
Yes.
our world today. So my whole entrepreneurial journey, what I've been doing is making friends with money and the ask and the transaction. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, yeah, it's like I love it because you're building the bridge, you're building the ship. You are, you're your best friend and your worst enemy. So you're it. And it's
Exactly.
fantastic and it's wonderful, but it's not for sissies.
No. No. Entrepreneurship is not for those that are faint of heart.
No, that's right. Faint of
Hmm.
heart. Yes, that's it.
Hmm.
You can't be faint of heart. You have to be ready to just really suffer. And I think the best little podcast I've ever heard on starting a business, which was this guy says, expect to suffer for at least 2 to 3 years, but you're suffering for 2 to 3 years to potentially end up with a lifetime of freedom. Like embrace the suffering. Like this is
Hmm.
just part of the journey. Like where have we ever gotten to? You think growing a thicker skin, I didn't suffer? Oh my goodness. Suffering was a big part of it, but just to,
Surviving nursing school.
yeah. And honestly, that's what I said in one of my blogs. It's like, I survived nursing school. I can survive this. That took me
Hmm.
for at least 2 decades,
Hmm.
you know? And now it's like, if I survive the pandemic, I can survive this. That was the next big thing to survive. So, no, this has been absolutely fantastic, Tina. It's so nice talking to you and meeting with you. And um, yeah, I'm excited to check further into what you're doing in the world and teaming up with you, see how you can help me get to my next step.
Yeah. You know what? I'm always here to help and serve. There's several different ways you can work with us at the Nurse Shark Academy. So if you're interested, anybody listening, just head on over to the nursesharkacademy.biz. We have a lot of different things. You can join our Pathway to Freedom program to help you get your business idea on the ground and launch and do it the right way. and building those important skeletal bones so that you don't find yourself into issues with regulatory hurdles and things like that, legalities, that I see so many nurse entrepreneurs get themselves tangled up in because they neglected to do their due diligence. So we help you to avoid all that by having the correct plan moving forward. But I want to thank you, Wendy, for your time. This has been a great conversation. I cannot wait to talk more with you because I'm pretty sure we can find some synergy. There's some people that I wanted to make sure that you are connected with on LinkedIn because I think that they are going to be instrumental in some of the work that you're doing. And I'll be excited to hear about when your book comes out. So when you get your book published, come back on the show. We'll talk about and promote your book and let our listeners know that it's available for them. Um,
Sounds fantastic, Tina. This has been a really fun interview. It's great to meet you. I'm sure we have a lot of stories to swap.
oh, definitely, definitely. And I always love meeting a fellow psych nurse as well. And I'm sitting here today wearing my "I am a nursologist" T-shirt. So
Oh, oh, where'd you
yeah,
get that from?
I made it.
I love
So this
that.
this this is going to be something that I was playing around with, and I think I might actually put it on for sale on my shop on my website. So you may be able to pick up
Perfect.
more new merch coming up. The "I am a nursologist" T-shirt. I decided to wear that. I said because the idea of it, and we talked about different theorists and things like that. But I've been really enamored by the idea of finding our nursing roots in our own research that's critical to our foundations. And so I've been really kicking that around in the last month or two about how I can further put in more things about the nursing foundations and theories that we need to focus on. So I
So
appreciate
you
all the work
probably have
you're
you
doing.
seen Ali Fokker because he's always talking about
Oh,
that.
yes.
Yeah, like he's really gotten me thinking too. And for
Hmm.
me, the incentives, the financial incentives are wrong, and more of the fixing the money aspect of healthcare, and that will shift everything. But yeah, we need our own foundations again.
We
We've lost
do.
our way. We've lost our way.
We do. When I did a little bit of research into back how nursing came about, a lot of people don't know that nurses were independent. Nurses did their own diagnoses. Nurses did their own treatment plans.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, as a nurse, you saw first, and then you only went to the physician when you needed surgery. And so, um,
Exactly. We've lost our way. We've
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 lost our way,
we've
and we want to
surrendered our power, and that's a
yes.
big part of what I'm doing is reclaiming our power and standing in our power in the one-on-one interactions. That's where we're going to transform healthcare. It's not going to be, other than moving the money and coming up with what you say. We need that to reclaim our foundations for sure. But it's just in the conversations that we're all having, and
Yes.
some of them are going to be hard conversations. So just knowing how to have those hard conversations, stay grounded, be responsive, and not escalate and turn it into a screaming match. Because I'm really good at screaming. Like I have a temper, like I told you about
Hmm.
when I lost it on my patient. Like it's in there, but it doesn't get you anywhere. It just fractures relationships and causes problems. So we have to learn how to regulate, self-regulate, so we can regulate the room.
Exactly. Well, there you have it, folks. We've had a great session today and look forward to further conversations with Wendy. So don't forget to, if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe to our show, the Nurse Shark Academy show. Check out our other show, the Nursing News You Can Use show that comes out every Wednesday at 5 o'clock for our live news broadcast. If you're seeing this in other places, you can get the audio version through Podbean and anywhere you get your podcasts. Leave us a comment and give us a rating. We appreciate that. We so enjoy having nurses to hear what's happening in all avenues of entrepreneurship. I thank you so much, Wendy. As again, I think you're like my third Canadian nurse, so I'm excited about that. I love it when I get nurses from outside of the U.S. to bring in their perspective because I think we think we're all in silos and that it's only happening to us. No, I cover news stories from all over the world in nursing, and I can tell you the same things that we
the
talk about
issues
here.
the issues are global. They're
They're global.
consistent and they're global. Yeah,
Yep, yep.
there.
So we
Well,
really
thank you
appreciate.
so much, Tina.
All right, bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Ready to turn your nursing skills into a thriving business? At the Nurse Shark Academy, we give you expert strategies, real startup guidance, and the support to go from employee to empowered entrepreneur. Join us and build the nurse-owned business of your dreams. Start today and join us at the nursesharkacademy.biz.
Thank you for listening to the Nurse Shark Academy show wherever you get your podcasts or watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you'll know when all of our episodes come out. If you want further information, you can contact us on the nursesharkacademy.biz.